So welcome to Two Women Who Give a Puck. My name is Sarah.
And I'm Tera.
And we are here to highlight the experiences of females in hockey, both players and coaches, as well as to provide tangible ways to create a more positive environment for those females. And today we have a guest. We have Topher Scott from the Hockey Think Tank, who I am super excited about having on because he has been a part of reimagining the youth hockey experience for many years, and he just is really supportive of youth hockey and educating players and parents and coaches on just inspiring them to be, have a better experience for everyone, which will be super positive for female players as well as for every player. So really bringing down the barriers for youth hockey players because, as I'm sure we'll talk about in this podcast, the trajectory of youth hockey is unfortunately kind of on a downward spiral.
Yes, and the reason I'm so excited is I fully embrace and love and want to protect community-based hockey, and that's a big thing that Topher promotes as well. And so talking about how that can promote the female game as well, and how we can build stronger community models that support the game for everyone, and not just the elite models that are the people behind and aren't for everybody. Yeah. So.
Right. So we're here to talk with Topher about what can be done to reverse the trajectory and enable hockey to become more accessible for a larger number of players, and especially those female players who aren't necessarily seen as traditional hockey players. So the higher the barriers, the fewer females we are going to have in the game. So welcome, Topher.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And on the heels of a little PWHL championship, where the Minnesota Frost last night. So exciting times up there in Minnesota as always, and very excited to be on here with you. So, yeah, let's talk some hockey.
Yeah, let's do it. Yep, I'm representing the Frost today. I was at the game with my daughter and her friend last night, and it was amazing. It was so exciting to have that win back to back, state of hockey, taking the first two Walter Cups, which is something to be very proud of. Yeah. Now, before we jump into what you're doing at the Hockey Think Tank, please go into your hockey story. Share with us how you fell in love with the game.
Yeah, it's kind of in the blood for me. So my mom, her brother, and my dad were college hockey teammates, and that's how they met. And so when I was born, I kind of didn't have a choice. It was one of those things where people joke I had skates on when I was born. So yeah, but family and hockey was my entire childhood. Grew up in Chicago and took a loving to the game at a very young age, and so was very fortunate to grow up in an environment that flourished. And I had a bunch of cousins that played, a bunch of uncles that played, my dad played. Unfortunately, none of the women on the hockey side played. It was just the guys. But I had a feeling if we grew up maybe 2 or 3 decades later here in Chicago, that might not be the case. But yeah, played my junior hockey for the Steel in the USHL in Chicago. Played my college hockey at Cornell, and a lot of my background is in college coaching. After I graduated, so been very fortunate to work at 3 different Division I universities. Started at Miami of Ohio as a graduate assistant coach and got my master's there in sports studies. And then I went to back to my alma mater where I played college hockey, Cornell University. Shout out, the boys just won the national championship for lacrosse yesterday. So it was pretty exciting to see that. And then spent a year at the University of Michigan as well. And now I work with a lot of youth hockey organizations with the Hockey Think Tank, and we're having a blast doing it. And I've learned a ton. So I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that here today. And but yeah, I absolutely love this game. This game is giving me everything in my life, and I owe so much of what I have to it.
Yeah, there's just something about hockey that is so different than any other game, and it's incredibly hard not to fall in love with the game. And so it's great that like us, you are encouraging even more people to get out there and play and fall in love with the game and just be part of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think
the Hockey Think
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say it's interesting. Like it's almost it's two different discussions. I think when it comes to loving the game, I think it's number one, like we're talking about, it's falling in love with the game, and I think the second thing is keeping your love for the game. And that's the one thing that I'm sure we'll talk a lot about here today. That unfortunately, a lot of what's happening in our sport at the youth levels, and I don't think maybe necessarily it's just a youth hockey problem. I think it's a youth sports problem in general, but it's that keeping in love with the game that we got some work to do on, to say the least.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's huge. And so Topher's not in Minnesota. He sees hockey all throughout the nation. And I think what a lot of people in Minnesota don't realize is that we have a unique hockey model here that actually is able to draw in more and more players. However, even that hockey model in Minnesota is, at risk of changing. And that's part of what we wanted to talk to you about, is really highlight for the folks in Minnesota, like, that this is a community-based hockey model and what that means and the benefits of that. And then we do want to talk about, what can we do to kind of protect that community-based model, and then what can other folks who maybe aren't in Minnesota, what can you do to kind of change that model to keep more of that love in the game, like you said.
Yeah, it's I think we're at a really critical time for our game right now. I think we're at a really critical time, and so much of what we see outside of Minnesota and what I see on a daily basis doing my work with the hockey think tank is youth sports, but youth hockey is what we're talking about, has shifted away from the community model and shifted more towards a professional business model. Youth sports in general is a $1 billion business, a billion with a B, and with that comes a lot of complications, let's say, and that's probably a very mild way of saying it. And so the shift, the shift towards the businessification, I don't even know if I said that right, businessification of hockey, it's led to the game becoming a lot more expensive. It's led to a lot of, thinking you need to have your kid's life figured out from an athlete standpoint at younger and younger ages every year. And USA Hockey does I think, a pretty good job of promoting what Minnesota is in terms of, hey, the best way to develop players is as many as possible for as long as possible in the best environment possible. And Minnesota wins that competition, and it's not even close. It's legitimately not even close to anywhere else around the country. Like for example, here in Chicago, where I live, we have 6 organizations that offer AAA tier 1 mites. So we're talking about tier 1 AAA for 7 and 8 year olds. And I don't think, and the research will tell you, that that's not the way to, number one, grow the game, and number two, if your goal is to develop more elite players, that's not the way to develop elite players either. And so I think what you guys have in Minnesota is still, and the numbers will show you on both the men's side and the women's side, that the community model is the best way to, on both counts, grow the game in numbers, and also when you talk about elite players, their development, that's how it goes. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Let's slow down. Let's create this community. Let's talk about life skills. Let's educate the parents. Let's take care of each other. And so much of what youth hockey has become in other parts of the US and Canada, and this is, like, honestly, I say it's kind of like my life mission right now, and that's to get people to recognize the importance and the power of the front of the jersey again. So much of what youth hockey has become is about making it, quote unquote, making it, whatever making it means, whether that's the NHL, the PWHL, the Olympics, college hockey, junior hockey on the boys' side, whatever. It's so much of the communication and so much of the, let's call it, recruiting is about, we're going to help your son or daughter make it at the end of the day. And I think that's where we have a big problem. And where I'm trying to come in and fill a gap is like, no, actually the way to make it is nobody's ever done it alone. And the more that you can create a community for your son or your daughter, the more that they're going to feel accepted, the more that they're going to be willing to take, not be afraid of failure, the more they're going to be coachable, the more they're able to be held accountable, all of these other life skills on top of the hockey skills that you need to be an elite athlete. And so, recognizing that the front of the jersey, the logo means something, it's getting lost. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is to make that important again.
I'm really happy that you mentioned the word community, because I think that's so important in not just the community-based model, but also in the youth sports experiences, creating a community of people around you. And I think it's more powerful, and it's the people you have to live with day to day too. The kids you go to school with, the people that are your neighbors, the kids you're playing on the pond with, because you have to learn social skills as well. It's more than just the game. But more importantly, you give them a place to play, or you give them a safe space, and it kind of gives them support that is so badly needed in, unfortunately, a really terrible time for kids and their mental health these days. And so when you give them a community that can support them, they do have that safe space. They do feel like they're part of something. They do feel like they're important and they're empowered, and all of these wonderful things that we need our kids to feel. And also, when you put them in these really high pressure environments, which is going to happen when mom and dad are paying so much money to play hockey, that fear of failure, I mean, that is so, it is so hard for them. And also, if they do fail, those feelings are almost too much for a lot of kids to deal with. And that in no way is helping the mental health of our youth. And so that's one of the things that I really love about that community-based model. How are we helping these people grow into adults? I mean, it's not about who you are as a kid. I mean, that's an important part, but how are we helping you be an adult that contributes, an adult that is going to be a coach in the future, which is, I think, what our big thing is here, is how do we get these girls to stay in the game long enough that they're doing that? And so I love when you say community, because that is so important to what we're doing here and what it was going to grow the game both overall and on the female side.
Yeah, and one of the things you said there too, Tara, I think we need to talk more about is the mental health side of it. I was on a call a couple weeks ago with a state senator from a state out east, and they are seeing this as a mental health problem, the way that youth sports has become. And not just for the kids, but for the adults, the parents as well, because they get wrapped up in it. And it, you guys, as you both know, either from yourselves or I'm sure from friends that you have in your community, it takes a toll on the parents when things get more professionalized and get a little bit more serious. And when that happens younger and younger, it's not good for mom and dad either. And so there is a toll that I think this is taking on our youth. That we treat them like grown-ups in sports way before they have the mental abilities and skills and emotional abilities and skills to be able to handle that stuff. And so I never try to be like the Chicken Little sky is falling person, because I don't want to grandize things that don't need to be grandized. But I think the way that we're going is this is, and I think anecdotally, you can probably talk to people that you know and be like, ooh, like there's a lot of people are pretty stressed about this stuff, and there's a lot of people where this stuff's affecting their personal lives and their marriages for moms and dads and kids, their relationships with their friends and at school and everything like that. You go to tryout time, there's, I get emails and notes from parents all the time that they sit in a different part of the arena than their friends because they're not sure how to talk to their friends about who's going to make what team and all this kind of stuff, right? And so yeah, I think we're getting to a point where we need to start talking about this from a mental health standpoint too. I really do. And certainly in Minnesota, I think it's not as bad because there still isn't a semblance of a community model, which is great. And people are taking care of each other and it's just a lot healthier, but certainly in a lot of other places, it's becoming as much of a problem where there's state senators creating task forces in their states about how youth sports model has changed and how it's affecting the mental health of the people young and old in their constituency. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. It's when we were playing, youth sports was just a fun way to go out and spend some time, and you had actual seasons, so you were only playing one sport at a time. So it's much easier to have a break. And I don't, like talking to my parents, they never had that pressure of like, now we need to play a spring league, and now we need to play a summer league, and now we need to do fall league. Because even though in Minnesota we have our community-based model, that's kind of the season and almost the break from kind of the elite hockey in a way is almost what it seemed like. And there's pressure from the first time your kid steps on the ice to do stuff in the off season. There's that fear of falling behind. Oh, my kid's gonna fall behind. I was just talking to a mom on the school bus, and she's like, "Oh, my daughter's behind. She's not as good of a player as like the other kids at her age group. She's 10." And so we have her in the summer program because she's just not aggressive, and she doesn't really take it seriously, and she's not putting all of her effort into playing the game. And I just kind of paused and was like, well, having her out on the ice more isn't really going to change any of those aspects of it. Like having her out more, there's this concept of more is better, but it's really the opposite, where actually if you aren't out there more, if your kid isn't out there as often, they actually may keep the love of the game, and they may be healthier and happier, and the parent can actually have some time to breathe as well. But there is some of that that mom guilt. Speaking from the mom side, I'm sure the dad side there's some of that too, but that mom guilt of like, oh, I'm not doing enough for my child, and so their friends are getting so much more than they are, and so they're going to become better. But really, like, not doing that stuff can help them. Like, just allow them to be kids. I've had so many parents recently who was like, yeah, we're not doing as much this year, and this is at our older child age, so they're 12 now. They've been going balls to walls since the kids were 6, and now finally after 6 years, they're like, we need to take a break. Like, our kid, he just wants to be a kid this summer. He doesn't want to play travel baseball and hockey. So are those a lot of the fears that you hear often? It's kind of that FOMO, being left out, or kids falling behind, or there's such a disconnect between the research and I think what most of us know is good and healthy for us and for our children, but then our actions aren't matching up to that.
There's a lot to unpack there, Sarah, to say the least. And what I will say is one of the biggest unfortunate consequences of this professionalization of youth sports is parental FOMO. I think it's alive and well, to say the least. And I had somebody that I was talking to just last week who basically said that youth sports is a foolproof business model. It's never going to be a bad business model. Why? Because parents will do anything for their kids, and they will go to the ends of the earth and spend as much money as they humanly have to make sure that their kids are happy and healthy and achieve their dreams at the end of the day. And for parents, it's not out of maliciousness. I mean, there are a few outliers who, my kid's going to be in the PWHL or the Olympics by the time they're 12 years old, that kind of treat their kids that way. But for the most part, a vast majority of the parents are great people who just want what's best for their kids. Now, what happens in how our hockey model has shifted towards a more 365-day a year, 4-season type thing is, first of all, you're getting information from everywhere, right? So whether you're on social media, whether you're online, whether you're getting the parents' email boxes, especially in the spring and the summer, is a very unhealthy place, because you're getting emailed a different tournament that you need to be at, a different showcase, a different camp, a different skills coach. You don't necessarily make money in hockey during the fall. You do, but like the spring and the summer is really where a lot of it's made, because that's the added season. And so now it's like, okay, And then what'll happen is, one or two kids from your team will end up doing one thing. And it's like, oh, should I be doing this too? Should I be doing this too? And then the crazy part is like all these businesses are great at marketing. So they have up on their website all the people who came through who are now doing all these amazing things in hockey. And it's like, well, actually they just spent like a weekend at a showcase there. So did you really do anything to make this kid like achieve her dreams? Probably not. And again, that's nothing against those companies or anything. They have every right to host these, and a lot of them do a good job and provide a good service and that. But in the aggregate, when you keep getting bombarded as parents with all these opportunities that you feel like, oh man, if I don't do this, then my kid's gonna get left behind. That's a very real issue. It's a very real issue. And so you mentioned it, Sarah, like, I feel like the best thing that parents could do is like, you have a gut instinct for a reason. You have a gut instinct for a reason. We have survived however many generations and eras of humankind based on what is right and what we feel is right. And so I would encourage parents, like, lead with what you really feel is the best for your kid. At the end of the day, this is something I tell youth hockey parents all the time. Like, yeah, these other people are telling you what can potentially be beneficial for you. Who knows your kid better, you or the company? It's you, like 10 times out of 10, 11 times out of 10. And so just as you're going through this process of siphoning out what's important, what's not important, and everything like that, I just encourage parents, just like do what's natural to you, and you can't go wrong. I don't, well, I mean, I guess you can, but like, more often than not, I think when you follow your gut instinct, especially as a parent, you're making the right decision.
Do you often hear the response that my kid wants to do it? They're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And I feel like the most common response I hear at the rink when I kind of express, like, it might be good to only play the association, to not play hockey year round. The most common response I hear is, well, my kid loves the game and, she says yes and she wants to do it. And so that's why we're doing it. When she doesn't want to do it, then we'll stop doing it.
Oh, mom wants me to do this. Because I can think of examples where parents like, oh, my kid loves hockey, they want to do that camp. And I'm like, I know your kid cries on the ice almost every practice. Like, are they really love hockey? Or are they doing it because it makes you happy and they love making you happy? And that's the hard part too, is it's harder to have those conversations when you're asking repeatedly about camps and about tournaments and teams and programs. And how many times can I say no to mom? People are just explaining me. Or say no to dad before you explain me. I feel like there's a piece of that as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And I think, I have 3 daughters. They're young, and my daughters want to eat ice cream for dinner every night. And I have to say no. That's because that's not good for you. And I think the same for like hockey or any sport. Like, too much of something is typically not a good thing. And so my cousin, who I do my podcast with, he played 10 years pro, and he's in the strength and conditioning world now, and he trains kids from men and women on both sides, from the youngest ages all the way up to people in the PWHL and the NHL. And his big saying is, more is not better, better is better. Right? Like, more is not better, better is better. And there's 2 realities of what's going on with the shift in how youth sports has become. Number one is the overabundance now of overuse injuries. And so hockey is not kind to the hips, the abs, the groins, the lower back. And just like the Tommy John surgery in baseball from too much playing baseball, you're seeing that for kids younger and younger. You're starting to see that in hockey now with overuse injuries. And then number 2 is just mental burnout. It's mental burnout and fatigue. Those are 2 real issues in youth sports today. And if we don't get a hold of this, like, more kids are going to get hurt, more kids are going to have mental health issues, and more kids are going to end up choosing other sports or just choosing not to play sports altogether because of the pressure that they feel seemingly 12 months a year now. And so, like I very much, I think that's a great line that my cousin had. More is not better, better is better. And if you talk to anybody in strength and conditioning now, the biggest thing that they talk, I shouldn't say the biggest thing, but like one of the biggest things they talk about is recovery and how important recovery is. You can't drive a car at 100 miles an hour without oil changes and tune-ups and rest and things like that. Just like as an athlete, even professional athletes, you look at youth hockey schedules outside of Minnesota, they're playing the same amount of games as pro players. Like, that's not right. And they're practicing more than pro players, and they're 12. And if pro players are getting injured, what's going to happen to these bodies when they get to be 15, 16 years old and start to go through puberty, and their joints and muscles are less strong and less put together and all that as their body's changing physically. And so it's a real thing that, again, I think we need to talk about more, those two unintended consequences of what's happening in youth sports today. It's the overuse injuries and the rise of mental burnout. And so kids need to rest physically, they need to rest mentally. That doesn't mean you have to stop cold turkey and not do anything in the spring and the summer. There's opportunities to do that, but like playing multiple sports and taking a break from hockey, putting your bag away for a little bit, it's really good for kids, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, and those like that, the burnout mindset, and then all those physical injuries, where I think not all parents, they're probably aware of it, but maybe not fully thinking it through. Is like those can be lifelong injuries. Those can have lifelong impacts, both on the mental health side and on the physical side. If you're a high schooler having hip surgery, like that impacts your body for a very, very long time.
Yeah,
And
as someone who has had 2 hip surgeries, and being 40 now, I feel it every day. And if I don't take care of it, like, and do my yoga 3 times a week, like, and I'm consistent with it, like, I'm getting out of bed hurting in the morning. So I amen to that. Yes.
right. So it's like, is it really worth it? And saying no, like you're talking about with the ice cream, you're looking out for your child's health. And then this is just thinking of a different way of looking out for your child's health. Like, ultimately parents want their kids to be in sports so that they're healthier. But this environment is actually kind of doing the opposite. And unfortunately, fear sells, and people are making a lot of money. And so you do have to, like you said, you kind of have to pause and think, is this really healthy for my child or my family? Or would it be a better idea to say no in this situation, even though people are, bombarding me and pressuring me to say yes?
Yeah. And I think the reality of it too, Sarah, is like when you look at the business opportunities that people have for kids, particularly in the spring and the summer, but all year round too, is that like there are a lot of really good people in hockey. And I'm included. We make money off of working with youth organizations, and we like to think that we have the kids' best interests in mind, and we like to think that we provide a service that can help people. There's a lot of people that feel that way, and there are a lot of even these showcase and tournaments that you don't need to do in the spring and the summer. They could be a great experience. It could be a great event, and the kids can have fun. But it's just what I call the machine, right? Like this aggregate of all of these different things going on at the same time. And for parents, that can be really hard to sift through. Now, are there people that are just in it to make a buck and see the dollar signs with what they're doing? For sure. I actually think that a vast majority of the people that are putting on these services are actually pretty good people and actually have the best of intentions of helping kids. Like, do you need to be on the ice with a skills coach 7 days a week during the summer? No. But that doesn't mean that the skills coach is a bad person and like trying to milk everything and all your dollars. No, like they actually could be helping your kid in specific ways. And so that's one of the hardest things for parents is like you build these relationships with these people who are trying to help you and do the right thing. And but it's constant. That's the hardest thing. It's constant and it's ever present. And so that's where like really as a parent having to, maybe put your foot down is a little bit too strong of a word, but just like prioritizing the things that will ultimately benefit your child from the physical and the mental standpoint, It's okay to say no. It is okay to say no. Saying no to something does not mean your kid's career is over. I promise you. You look at all the data and the statistics. There are yes, there are paths for the kids to high level hockey who do all that stuff and they still end up making it. You see a lot more horror stories of people that go that way, whose kids fall out of love with the game really quick. But a lot of people, it's like a slow, steady burn where they just keep going, and it's not something that they throw everything in their life into this dream that their kid has, and it's an all or nothing, make or break type thing. Most people make it come from good families and they're good people. And so just again, going back to your gut instinct and sifting through it all, what's essential, what's not essential, what can we prioritize, what do we not need to prioritize, and then surrounding yourself with good people who can give you good advice on this stuff. I think that goes a long way too. So it is hard because hockey is a game that's centered around good people. I think there's so many good people in our game, and navigating what to do and what not to do can be hard when you got a lot of good people asking you to do things.
The argument that we hear a lot is community-based hockey that follows, USA Hockey Stadium, it doesn't look like hockey. So I need to find opportunities for my child that look like hockey, quote unquote, whatever that might be. And we've run into that person where someone critiques our coaching, our practice plan or something we're doing on there. It's like, what doesn't look like hockey? But how do you, because I'm sure you run that with the people you work with, how do you combat that argument that it has to look like hockey? Because when you start playing for lights at nights, that's where you get to overuse, that's where you get to inappropriate game size. And you're not really teaching them hockey then. You're teaching them how do I survive going up and down the ice 6 times and not lose the puck. But you're not teaching them how to get the puck out of the corner. You're not teaching them, body contact. You're not teaching them all the important things that they need to be learning when they're still small enough to do that safely and they don't. Let's face it. So what do you say to people when you hear those type of arguments as to why chasing extra hockey is not the right choice?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. So when you talk about like the ADM, first of all, the ADM is amazing. I think it's a huge part of the reason why the U.S. is doing so well. We just won the World Championships on the boys' side. Was that yesterday or 2 days ago or something like that? First time, I think, 90-something years. I think the ADM has a lot to do with that, and the way that we have used research-based practices to make people better. So number one is the research will tell you that. I think number two is, I'm a young parent, so I got small kids, and my kids are dabbling into all different sports right now. And hockey is literally the only sport that does this. We are the only sport that does this. We go to my kid's soccer game. It's smaller nets, smaller fields, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, and they keep progressing up. Baseball, basketball, like every other sport that's a team sport has, modifications where it's age appropriate. And then I think the last thing, and this is even for kind of like, I don't want to call them the crazies, but the people who are like, if you don't do it this way, like my kid's not going to be an elite hockey player down the road. Like they have to play full ice and stuff. It's funny because I have a nephew who's 9 years old and he's a squirt now. And they had a little spring league thing, little championship game at the rink in town. I went to go watch it, and I'm sitting with his dad, his grandpa, and he was asking me these questions about this conversation we're having right now. And like, it doesn't make you a better hockey player to skate in a straight line with a puck and do things yourself. And like that doesn't make you a good hockey player. It gives you bad habits. And so what happens is like you watch a mite game. So I would encourage everybody to go watch a mite hockey game, an 8U, or even a squirt hockey game, and then a peewee hockey game, and then a bantam hockey game. Like the games itself look so much different every level that you go up. And what we reward at the youngest of ages does not work when you get older. So, for instance, the kid who's the biggest and the fastest and most physically mature is rewarded for skating in a straight line down a full ice sheet and scoring a goal. So then they're like, okay, this is what I need to do to be a good hockey player. I need to not pass the puck. I need to skate in a straight line, and I need to go score a goal. When do you ever see that in the NHL? When do you ever see that in college hockey? When do you even see that in high school hockey in Minnesota on the boys and the girls? You never see that. And so I'm watching this game of my nephew, these 9-year-olds that are playing, and literally in 10 minutes that I was watching, there were like 8 passes made. And what's the most important thing you need to develop if you want to be an elite hockey player? It's hockey sense and the ability to get open and the ability to find people who are open and read a play. And so like from a practical, this is what makes you better standpoint too, like that's it. And what's the other thing you really need to play hockey at the elite levels? You need to have a really good compete level. Well, when you play in small areas, there's much more reps to touch the puck, which gives you better skill. There's much more abilities for competitive, reps in a like a stick battle or a battle to get the puck, and you're making plays in tight areas, and like those are the things that translate to the next levels. It's not skating in a straight line from goal line to goal line and scoring a goal. People eventually are going to get as fast as you and be as big as you and as strong as you, and then that part of your game, I've seen it so many times. And that's why the best 10-year-olds aren't always the best 15-year-olds, because we reward the best 10-year-olds for skating in a straight line, and then they have no hockey sense. They don't know how to play the game. So this is sorry to be on the soapbox here on that one, but like it's just it makes me laugh and cry both at the same time having this conversation, because it's like, look at the research, look at all the other sports, and then like this is not like, we should not be rewarding what we're rewarding at the youngest of ages as it relates to like your development as a hockey player.
Yeah, and I think we see that so much. So we're still, our oldest, we're just first year Pee Wee, and then we have 10U sports. So we've definitely been in those lower levels. And I've seen this a ton with the parents. So there's that, I guess the different lens that maybe people who didn't play hockey are looking at the game through. And it is that, well, my kid can, dominate and can skate end to end and can score goals, that they're rewarding that, and that looks good, and that makes the parents feel really, really good about themselves and the decisions that they've made, because of a lot of the kind of quote unquote elite programs in our state really focus on those individual skills, and it makes your daughter or your son look really, really, really good. So you feel really good as a parent. But then looking at it from a long-term hockey development lens, like you said, is, they can only get away with that for so long. And then they're actually going to have to start playing catch up, because now they have to learn a different way of playing the game, because now they have to develop hockey sense, where it's not just get the puck, put my head down and go towards the goal. Now I actually have to look for my teammates and know how to pass and know where to be. And so, it's it looks really, really good, and the parents feel really, really good. And I think that's part of why they, continue to encourage their kid to do kind of all these individual based things.
Also, that curve where they have to catch up, they were not used to failure. And so that's really hard on their mental health again. Like, why am I failing to play the housework? I used to be the top scorer, and now I'm struggling to make it up the ice without losing the puck. I'm half the number of goals I had last year, which really has no bearing on how good of a hockey player you are, right? Are you a team player? Are you making this plays? Are you seeing the passes? Are you being smart about the game? That's what people are, the college coaches and scout camp looking for. Not your attitude all the game. They don't care if you can get up there and shoot and I mean, it helps, but that's not what it helps. So when all of a sudden there's that curve of like, oh, I have so much more I have to learn, that's very hard on the kids.
Right. Okay, so we've talked, there's a lot of kind of doom and gloom in the youth sports world now. But I want to hear, we're living the community model in Minnesota, and hockey in Minnesota is very unique and special, even compared to different sports. So it's like my daughter plays lacrosse, my son plays baseball. The parent group and the team building is nowhere near hockey. And that is the joy and the benefit of the community model, is like you're saying, that like bring it back to the front of the jersey instead of the back of the jersey. So kind of to end this podcast, like, what are all the great things that you are seeing with the community model and what it brings to the players and the families?
There's honestly so much. There's honestly so much. And what I encourage people that like even are outside or that are outside of Minnesota is like, how can you create community in the world that you live in? You know, how can you create it within the youth organization that your kids are in and that you're involved with? Because at the end of the day, you know, you look at all the research on productivity, you look at all the research on mental health, how to build, you know, a great company. Like when you have community and people are centered around a shared and common goal, like it's just a safer environment where people can be themselves. And I think that's, as leaders, the best thing that we can do for our people that we're leading is to create an environment where people feel like they can be themselves at work, at the rink, or wherever it may be. And so I think the community model for a couple different reasons, I think it's awesome. Number one, I think you attract the best coaches in the community model. And the reason why I say that is um, at the end of the day, probably the most important people in a youth hockey organization are the coaches. The coaches are the mentors. The coaches are the psychologists. You know, the coaches are the coaches who are teaching the hockey stuff. You know, they're the most important people in your kids' lives outside of yourself as a parent and potentially their teachers at school. And so, you know, I lived it in the non-community model where I came from college coaching into youth hockey coaching and realized pretty quickly, I'm like, man, everybody is so stressed. And I'm feeling pressure to like win and develop in certain ways based upon the parents and stuff like that. And it wasn't an enjoyable experience for me. And so I think about there's a lot of really good hockey people, I think, outside of Minnesota and outside of like where there is community that played at a high level of hockey and understand the game and want to give back, want to get into it. And then they dip their toe into the professional model and they do it for a year or two. And they're like, no, I'm good. I'm good. This is not what I signed up for. And then I think in the community model where you guys you have the best coaches because how many of those people came through that program, went on to play higher level hockey, you know, college hockey, pro hockey, whatever it may be. And then they come back to their town and it's a great environment like we talked about. And they're like, yeah, this is something I want to give back to. I want to. And so you're getting a lot more quality people. And that's, again, not to say that there aren't quality people on the other side, because there are many. There are plenty of them, but there could be more if the environment was better. And so I think that's a big part of it. The other big part of it is I think it's really good for kids, again, going back to the beginning of the conversation, both from a mental health standpoint, but also from a hockey development standpoint, to play for something bigger than yourself. I think there's something so amazingly great about playing for something bigger than yourself. And in the community model, you know, it's not just for the players in the locker room that you're going to battle with, but it's for your parents. It's for the alumni. It's for the people who laid the groundwork for you so you can have all these amazing opportunities in your town. And that's something we talked a lot about in college hockey all the time. Now, I played at Cornell, and there's a rich tradition of hockey at Cornell. And we talked about that with our players all the time. If not for the people before you, their blood, sweat, and tears and the work that they put in, we wouldn't have the expectations of winning championships every year. We wouldn't have the sold out crowd, you know, to play in front of. And you see that in high school hockey big time in Minnesota. And so just that that notion of like, hey, I'm not just playing for myself and making it here. Like, I'm playing for the greater good. And I've done some team building stuff in Minnesota with different high school teams. And it's really cool. Every time I do it, I have the seniors stand up and talk about their experience. Like, what has this experience given you? And they get emotional. You know, they get emotional and they're like, I've been going to war with these teammates since I was 6 years old. And this is potentially the last time we're ever going to be able to do that. And there's tears and there's hugs afterwards. And, you know, like at the end of the day, that's a pretty special thing to say the least. And that you get in the community model in spades. And that's where, from the mental side, but also the development side too. You know, everybody talks about like the playing games versus practices and practice to game ratios. Like I think you get better by playing quality games, not quantity. And when you're in the community model and you're playing against a rival and you're playing against another community that you've grown up to hate, and you like those games make you better. Like a Sunday where you're playing your fourth game in 2 days, at some showcase and you have nothing left in the tank, and like that's not making you better. Like playing on a Friday night in front of a sold out crowd, in front of your friends and your family against a group that's going to push you to your limit and challenge you because it's a rival, like that's going to make you better too. So like, in so many different ways, I think the community model is just leading the way, in so many different facets and capacities of human development, of athlete development, of community development, mental health and awareness. Like we got to do a better job outside of Minnesota on creating that in the environments and the conditions that have been created. And in Minnesota, like for anybody that's listening, like understand that what you have, and I say this to people in Minnesota all the time, like this is special what you have. This is not the norm. And like hold it dearly with what you have. Like, and again, like I'm a data guy, like look at the data. In a lot of other parts in the country, in the girls' side, this is a specific, like a girls' hockey podcast. In the girls' side, you're seeing a lot more growth everywhere. Like, and that's awesome with the rise of the PWHL and social media, and it's getting out there more. And my God, the standing on the backs of the Kendall Coynes and the Hillary Knights of the world and what they have gone through to make sure that this game is better for the next generation of girls that are coming up. I literally am getting chills right now thinking about it, because I remember having conversations with some of those women 5-6 years ago where they stood up to USA Hockey and they stood up to the powers that be. And like, it's absolutely incredible. So on the girls' side, it's actually growing everywhere. On the boys' side, it's not. You look at where the parts of the country it's become more professionalized, the numbers are telling not a good story. Not a good story. And in Minnesota, you continue to lead the way in growth in numbers, growth in elite players, and I think a healthier kind of model to go with. And so, yeah, and I we can get into like the women's side and those, like the women and what they've been through in the last decade. To like, that's the thing that I admire most. And now having 3 daughters, my oldest is 8 years old, so she was born in the midst of all this stuff that was going on. Like my daughters will have more opportunities should they fall in love with the game than my sister did, or my wife, and you guys too. Like it's so cool to see a thriving professional league. It's so cool to see numbers everywhere across our country continue to rise on the women's side. And for our podcast, our first ever interview was Kendall Coyne Schofield, and to hear her talk so passionately about these things, man, it just it's really cool to say the least. So you guys didn't even ask me that question, but it went there for some reason.
But I think it is. Here in Minnesota, we take for granted, and we don't realize just how amazing it is and how different it is. Like our kids will show up at the rink. The parents, like our friends are hockey parents. Our kids' friends, a lot of them are hockey friends, and they go and watch each other play. No matter the level, from AA down to C, it's not uncommon to show up to a game at our rink. Even during the district tournaments, you'll be traveling to a rink a half hour, 45 minutes away to watch your friends play. And so those kids on the ice just feel that. And like you said, there's just so much more pride, and they're going to get better because they're playing for more and they have more passion for it. It's not just their parents coming to watch, it's their classmates, it's the players that they played with for the last 6 to 10 years. They know the names of the high school players because they've seen them at the rink and they're watching them and striving to be like them, and that just keeps that love of the game and the passion. And so that is a really big message I want the Minnesota folks to hear, that we have an amazing thing going with our association, and let's keep it.
Yeah,
Let's keep it. yeah, let's not take it for granted. Let's keep that. It's so different. And it's such a different environment compared to the rest of the country. And if, the full professionalism really keeps in even more into Minnesota, like, our players are going to fall so much more out of love with the game. And we may not be the state of hockey anymore. And that's a big,
Mine's not say basketball.
yeah.
Well, I think
I mean, that's a
well, you guys are so right. And I think about, like, even for the crazies out there that are listening, the ones who, their sole goal in life is to make sure their kid plays in the PWHL or plays in the NHL or gets the Olympics, whatever. I have been very fortunate in my career, both as a player and as a coach, to have been a part of teams and have coached and have gotten to know a lot of really high level athletes, players at all of those levels that I just talked about. There's only one thing that is consistent with all of them, and that's they all love the game. They all love the game. I'm sure they have talent. Yes, let's not discount that. Like, they all have talent too. So maybe there's two. They were given a gift from above. But I don't know, and there are a few that skirt through because they're just that talented. But 99% of the people that achieve that level, the one consistency is they love to play hockey. They absolutely love to play hockey. So if you are a crazy and you want your kid to play at those levels, the best thing that you can do is surround your kid with people who will help them to fall in love with the game. That's your most important job as a parent, whether you're crazy or not. Surround your kid with really good people who are going to help them to fall in love with the game and teach them life skills. Because at the end of the day, even if you want to achieve those levels, the hockey side's a part of it. It's not the whole thing. You need to be resilient. You need to understand the value of work. You need to understand the value of playing for a team. Those are all, like, you need to understand the value of ownership and accountability. Like, I don't know very many people that achieve those levels that don't have those life skill things either. And so surrounding your kids with people who can teach them those things and help them to fall in love with the game a little bit more. Like, and again, like, I'm a new parent, so I don't know anything about parenting, but, like, I feel like that's our most important job. Surround them with the right people that can help them to develop those skills. And maybe they won't make it at the end of the day. Most don't, but they will be better off as people for it. They will be more successful in life. They'll be better husbands and wives and brothers and sisters and everything in between, better employees for their companies that they work for once they're done with the game. And you learn those things a lot more when you have good people in your inner circle. And so surrounding yourselves and your kids with the right people, man, there's no better obligation or no bigger obligation that we have as parents than that.
right. And remembering that group, they may actually say no, and they may have hard conversations with you, and it's not just going to be those who say yes, 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 and who applaud, everything that you do. So I think that's a good reminder too with who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah, totally.
So we usually end by asking what the takeaway is. I think you wrapped it up pretty nicely there.
Glad to help.
Yeah, perfect. You're hired.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun. Our previous conversation was a lot of fun. This conversation was a lot of fun. So appreciate all that you guys are doing for our great game. We call it the greatest game on the planet. And so thanks for all your efforts to continue to move the game forward in any way that I can help in the future. Just, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything you guys do on your podcast. If in preparation for this, I listened to a whole bunch of them. Drove down to Southern Wisconsin this weekend for a wedding. Listened to you on the way there and back. And there's so many important conversations I think that you and your cousin are having and some of your guests, and I applaud you for that as well, because it was really nice to hear people talk sensibly about some of this stuff rather than we get a lot of hype. And so I thought it was just really neat to hear somebody that was on kind of the same wavelength about what's reasonable and what's not, and how do we make our kids better without pushing them too far. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. We have fun. We have fun doing it.
Yeah. So everyone check out the Hockey Think Tank podcast, hockeythinktank.com. you're a youth organization or on the board of a youth organization, call Topher off. He connects with youth organizations, has a ton of free education out there for players and parents and associations. So make sure to check that out. 'Cause, I mean, you're definitely, like Tara said, looking out for the best interest of our sport, our players, our parents, and our coaches. And so we are incredibly grateful for you for that. And yeah, it's so refreshing to hear those conversations. And I oftentimes grab those podcasts and send them out to my parent group, just as kind of that education. I feel like that's a big piece that's missing, just the education of, it's okay to say no. There are different paths. You can still become a good player by saying no to the 80 million things that are flying at you. You can say no. You don't have to say yes to everything. And we
Thanks.
do have our
Yeah.
final question.
Oh, yes. What do you want your hockey legacy to be?
Oh, that's a deep one. What do I want my hockey legacy to be? Wow, that's I don't want my hockey legacy to be. Honestly, just made the game better, and had a positive impact on people's lives. I think that's really all we can hope for and ascribe for. Really just helping people through this journey and helping them to understand it, but ultimately just making a positive impact at the end of the day.
Not a bad one to have.
I'll have to think about that one a little. That's a good question.
I'll let you guys borrow it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can send us an email. You can do a little clip after. You
All
can
right, sounds good.
I think if anyone listened to what you said throughout this podcast, they can definitely feel what you want your legacy to be and feel that positive impact that you are having within the hockey world. So thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. And to end the podcast, I want to remind all the ladies out there that we belong in hockey and we deserve to be a part of the greatest game in the world.